Hello and welcome to the latest episode of the Wildcast podcast. This is Michael Lev, columnist and senior writer for the Arizona Daily Star. I am joined today by Kenzie Fowler from the University of Arizona, former softball player, two-time All-American. She's a Hall of Famer. She also serves as an analyst for U of A softball and Big 12 softball for ESPN and ESPN Plus. And we are going to preview the Big 12 tournament. We're going to talk all things Arizona softball as we approach the regionals, which start next week. Kenzie, how are you?
I am great. I'm sitting in my office right now, watching softball on my TV, talking softball with you. So life is good.
Yeah, it's that time of year, right?
It is.
So I would say, let's just jump it right in here. I would say this is probably the best team that Caitlin Lowe has had. We don't know how far they're going to go. Obviously, they made it to the College World Series in her first season in 2022. But if you look at the win-loss record, various other metrics, this seems like the strongest team. What do you think about that?
Agreed. I think this is her strongest team. I think it's her strongest offense. I think it's the first year that they have had a solidified ace in the circle. That has kind of been the question the last couple of seasons. It's been a pitch by committee. I know Hannah Bowen really took the reins in the postseason when Arizona made that 2022 Women's College World Series run. But in terms of like the bulk of from February to now May, Arizona knows that Devyn Netz is their ace. And so that is where this game starts. It starts in the circle. But also it's the best defensive team in the Big 12. They have the best fielding percentage, and they have the second best fielding percentage. They have the best batting average. So your top two in those respective categories, and then you just look at the depth that she has on the bench. Without a doubt, her best team so far.
Yeah, Devyn Netz, we know all about the various accolades that she has earned this year. She is having by far her best year as a pitcher. If you look at her ERA in 2023, which was the last time she played, it was 3.88. It's almost half of that now. It's 2.00. She doesn't strike out a ton of people. Like if you look at the Big 12 strikeout leaders, there's 3 who have over 200. She's at 106 and less than 1 per inning, but she's top 12 nationally in walks allowed per 7 innings. What is the difference? Like, what has made her so much more effective as a pitcher this year versus maybe what she was in the past?
To me, it's mental. I think she's fearless. I think she does more with less, which is a compliment. I hope, I don't think she'll be listening, but if I were to say that to her, that should be a compliment. I think she does more. You think of, she doesn't throw like 73, 74 miles an hour, which is what you'll see from Ruby Malin, the ace All-American for Oklahoma State. Of course, Nigel Kennedy, the ace, probably pitcher of the year for the Big 12. They're throwing mid-70s. Devyn's not bringing that kind of velocity. She does throw hard, and she does have good movement, but she's just fearless. She's gritty. She's always in attack mode. And to me, that is because she's a 5th-year senior. It's because she was able to sit out all of last season and wait. And you have that competitive drive, right? And it's stewing and you're like, I want to get on the field. And you know that your time is ticking and you have 1 year to make it count. And so she's feeling good. She's healthy. Last year she wasn't healthy, which is why she redshirted. And so you have all those things coming together. And of course, having her hit, I feel like that is such a mental cleanse for a pitcher. It just keeps your mind so free. You're able to produce for your team in different ways. So watching her has been just such a joy this year. And of course, her pitching has been the standout in her career, just, the stats that you just pointed out. But I think it's just because she has the maturity and she's mentally tough as they come. So it's fun to watch.
Were you a two-way player throughout your career?
I was in high school. I could hit it a little bit. My freshman year, coach gave me half a season of at-bats. But it was a time where the staffs were much thinner. So there was, a little bit of shakeups in the roster, and there was supposed to be a senior when I was a freshman, and that senior, didn't, return to the team. And so, it wasn't the era of the transfer portal where you could just snap your finger and get another pitcher in. So coach and I, had conversations where he's like, I'd love for you to be in the lineup and I'd love for you to play first base, but we can't afford it. So he let me hit a little bit my freshman year, and then I practiced all the time at first base. And I finally had a conversation with him like, Coach, am I going to be playing here, or are we just taking reps to take reps? And he's like, yeah, you're probably good. You just head to the bullpen. I was like, okay, shake hands. See you later. So I would have loved to have hit. I just don't think we had the flexibility on our staff at the time to allow me to do that.
Yeah, I bring that up not only because I love hearing your stories from your playing days, but Miranda Stoddard didn't hit last year for Arizona. She was just a pitcher. And then this year, she became a two-way player, and she's one of the best hitters on the team. How did something like that happen?
Depth. That's exactly what I'm talking about. So last year, Arizona is hamstrung. No pun intended. I think there might have been a hamstring injury in there somewhere. But, I mean, you could have – Ryan Maddox was out with injury. Sydney Sommerdike out with injury. Devyn Netz, the ace of the team, out with injury. And so you don't have the depth that they have this year. So it was Aisa Silva and Miranda Stoddard. We had Brooke Mannon, seeing her a little bit, but it's a freshman and unknown. And so the two pitchers with experience, it is your show. And it's the same situation where you cannot afford to have anything happen to Miranda Stoddard. If Miranda Stoddard would have gone down last year, that team would not have made it to the NCAA tournament at all. And so you bring in all those new pieces. Devyn is healthy. She's taking the bulk of the innings. It frees up Miranda to not only hit, to play first base, and to just create so many different opportunities for Coach Lowe, and also just gives everyone breathing room. I don't think that's talked about enough, but if you have someone to your left and to your right that can pick you up and let you exhale if you are not on your A game, man, that is the difference, especially as you head into the NCAA tournament, because you got to share it. If it's all on your shoulders, that's really a tall task to go into, knowing that if it's not me, then we don't get it done. And so it's a collective effort this year for Arizona.
Yeah, there are definitely some teams that are constructed that way, but when you look at Arizona, it's really more of a 1-2 punch. Devyn Netz leading the way, as you mentioned. She's really developed into a legit ace. She has a 2.00 ERA. Miranda Stoddard is at 1.81. So she's right there as pitcher 1A in the mix. Something interesting happened to Devyn recently. She was drafted into a new professional softball league that's called Athletes Unlimited Softball League, or AUSL. I believe, was it 12? I think 12 college players, yes. Right?
Yep.
Drafted. How big of a deal do you think that is?
Huge. You think about how many players there are in the country and how many seniors want one of those golden tickets. And there were so many players, after the draft happened this weekend, I was like, man, just thinking about all these seniors that didn't get a golden ticket and didn't get drafted. I don't know if they're planning to do a free agency, where they can, have a signed player come later, because there's so many deserving seniors right now. So to be one of the 12 that gets drafted, Devyn did get drafted this weekend to the Bandits. So she will team up with former Arizona All-American Taylor McQuillan, who was drafted to that team earlier this year. Fun fact, that team's GM is also Jenny Dalton-Hill, who is, Arizona icon. So you've got 3 Wildcats for the Bandits. Can't leave out Deja. Deja is on the Talons, I want to make sure I get that right. But yeah, really cool place for Devyn to be drafted, having especially a role model in Taylor. I know they have a very close-knit relationship, and, you can have a mentor that is there for you in your rookie season of your professional career. And I know that she wanted to play pro. I was talking to her, last month, and, you're doing I hate doing it because I remember it being done to me, but it's always what are your plans? What are you going to do after college? What's next for you? And, the student athletes are rolling their eyes oh, I'm just trying to finish my career here. Leave me alone. But she was a good sport. She's like, I really want to play pro. I have some contacts. Maybe coach can get me a gig in Italy. looking to play maybe in Japan. Like there's some opportunities, for me. And so I was just sitting there going, man, I really hope that AUSL, drafts her. And then a month later, she got a golden ticket. So I was like, man, that was so cool for her. Very big deal. This is a league that I have called games for them, and they do it the right way. It's been a bumpy road in our community for professional softball to get off the ground. There's been so many different leagues, so many people with good intentions that it's just really hard to break through. So it feels like for the first time that this is something that maybe has sticking power, and there's a lot of big names attached to it. I think it's really good for our sport, and it's going to be on ESPN this summer. So I think exposure is number one name of the game. And so Arizona fans will be able to watch Devyn, watch Taylor, and watch Deja this summer on the ESPN networks and the platforms.
So obviously the College World Series is super popular. The sport itself is growing and more popular than it's ever been. So it seems surprising to me that professional softball hasn't really stuck or taken off. But as you mentioned, they're going to get some exposure this summer because of, I think, when they play is really important. I mean, that's kind of that's sort of a sports dead period, right? Like NBA and NHL will be over. Football hasn't quite started yet. Like mid-June to late July is a really good time to try to just get yourself out there a little bit. For people who don't know, there's 4 teams in the league, and they're kind of do like a barnstorming thing, right? Like they don't have a city that they're attached to. I don't know, that might change in the future depending on how things go, and they of course could expand too if things go well. I personally think Tucson would be a great locale
shameless plug
to have a professional softball team. You can play the games at night. There's a great facility here. There's a built-in fan base. You could easily have plenty of Arizona alums on the team. So hopefully, that's something that really all comes together.
Yeah, look, when I was a kid, we had the Arizona Heat with the NPF, and they played, I want to say they played some games at High Corbett. So I will have to go back and make sure I'm right. But I know they were here because I went to them as a young kid, and it was part of the NPF, and it was a team that, didn't stick. It was around for a couple of seasons and then didn't stick for whatever reason. But I do know that they are planning to, number one, expand the amount of teams to at least 6 next summer. And I do know that they are going to attach to cities next summer. So this is the soft launch, if you will. The marketing so far has been top tier. I think the golden ticket, whoever's idea that was brilliant. Because then you're leveraging all of these teams that have those built-in fan bases like you're talking about, and it just presents a social moment. And there were so many of those, like where you see it, whether you're following softball or not, you're like, what is this golden ticket thing? And then that leads to a quick Google search, and now you're learning about the AUSL. So the marketing has been top tier so far, and I think sprinkling around the cities this summer, just trying to get into the communities and get butts in seats for professional softball. I will say adding a new commissioner in Kim Ng for the AUSL has been really big. Obviously, she was a GM with the Miami Marlins the last couple of years. And so someone that played softball in college and has a softball background, but also has that professional-minded MLB approach and can maybe be the person that connects the MLB to professional softball. Because to me, that has always just been, in my opinion, this is just what I think. I really think we need the backing of MLB to help get professional softball off the ground. It's the exact same thing that we saw with the WNBA and the NBA with the backing of the early years of the W. And now look what has grown. It didn't happen overnight, right? But you have to have just that partnership for fans and just for the overall professionalism. The MLB is a bajillion years old, and professional softball has only been around for, 3-4 decades. So we're looking, hopefully, fingers crossed, that maybe this is the start of something. But how cool for Devyn to be, first boots on the ground of this new movement.
Right. I think also there's some star power that they're able to bring to the league because these players, they become pretty well known when they play in the College World Series and they do well um, in that space. So I think that is helpful too. If you can get some big name players that people are just compelling and people want to see them. I mean, obviously, Caitlin Clark is taking the WNBA's popularity to a whole new level. I mean, maybe, and this is a professional podcasting segue here. Maybe Nigel Kennedy can be that person when the time comes for her to leave. She is, of course, now pitching for Texas Tech. She began her career at Stanford. She's probably, maybe definitely, the best pitcher in the country. Certainly the best pitcher in the Big 12. Texas Tech, which has never really been a thing in softball, won the Big 12 this year for the first time. Do you think that experiment, quote unquote, has been a success?
Without a doubt. Looking, hindsight is everything, but I think if Coach Glasgow, could redo his schedule, he would have a harder non-conference strength of schedule. That is the one thing that is weak on their resume. And they just didn't have a ton of, big time matchups early in the season that hurt them. Which is why they are currently a bubble team, which is crazy to say because if anyone has followed Big 12 softball this year, they have been the best team with the best pitcher in the world. So it has worked. They have won. But right now, as it stands, the bracketology, everyone has them as a bubble team, barely squeaking in as a 16 or maybe 15 seed. Your face is hilarious because that's how everyone feels. But the math is the math, and the committee doesn't care. So I would say if they win the Big 12 tournament, then they are a shoo-in to host. But it has been a topic of conversation in my community about, is Texas Tech, is their resume good enough to host? And can you imagine if you had Texas Tech and Nigel Kennedy coming into your regional as a 2 seed? It could happen. It could also happen for Oklahoma State with Ruby Malin, who is an All-American pitcher. Could be somebody's 2 seed hitting the road for regional. So I think if Oklahoma State runs the table and wins the Big 12 tournament, they could sneak in. They are also right on the bubble to host a regional. There's a lot to play for in this Big 12 tournament for sure.
Just to clarify, you're talking about bubble as a host, not
bubble as a host. Yep. So right now, if you look at like the live RPI, they might. I haven't looked at it.
They're 19 right now.
Yeah. So it's top 16. RPI is not everything. They also look at strength of schedule. They look at your quad 1 wins. They look at your quad 4 losses. All of it comes together. But you think about the best team in the Big 12 has an RPI of 19. It's not great. Arizona's, for reference, Arizona's RPI I think is 11. So incredibly strong. You look at the non-conference wins and competition that Coach Lowe was able to get together going into the Big 12 was the difference maker for the Cats. And you get those wins, you play those hard teams, you take care of business in your conference, and you're rewarded, with the top 16 ranking in the RPI. And Arizona, you can Sharpie them in to host a regional, even if they lose a game. If they lose their opening game in the Big 12 tournament, they will be a regional host. You can Sharpie it in. Arizona fans can start getting ready to make their plans to come to Hillenbrand next weekend.
Yeah, so Arizona opens the Big 12 tournament on Thursday. They play at 3 p.m. Arizona time, 5 p.m. In Oklahoma City. Weather permitting, you never know what you're going to get weather-wise in that.
Especially in Oklahoma City. Oh my gosh, the amount of times I've been there, and there's tornado warnings and just torrential rain. It's, it is my favorite place, and it's not my favorite place all at the same time. But anyway, continue on. Yeah.
So they'll face either UCF or Houston. UCF is the 7 seed. Houston is the 10 seed. They just swept Houston at their place. UCF actually took 2 out of 3 from Arizona in March. So just something to keep in the back of your mind if you're just sort of assuming Arizona is going to roll through this thing. The 3 seed in the tournament, I think, is Iowa State. So that is the likely matchup in the semifinals. Of course, as you mentioned, Texas Tech is number one, and they are the favorite because they have Nigel Kennedy on their team. I think we can all agree that the Big 12 is not on the same level as the Pac-12 was, right?
Correct.
When you were in the Pac-12, you could go 500 or even under 500 in your league and still make the NCAA tournament because the strength of the conference was so great and it was so deep. So now that you've watched this league very closely, and this league doesn't have Oklahoma or Texas in it anymore, of course, either. What is your assessment of just kind of Big 12 softball in terms of how good of a league it is, et cetera?
Lots of potential. I think there's lots of room for growth. You look at a team like Baylor, who I'm looking at the bracket as an 8 seed. Baylor is a program that has been to the Women's College World Series a ton. They're a team that we are very used to seeing in a super regional, having that type of postseason presence, and they're an 8 seed. So to me, that's a down year for the Bears. So potential of them reloading in the offseason, getting back to what we are so used to seeing from them. Of course, Utah has had some recent success going to the postseason and going to supers. They're having a down year. UCF has been a team that's been on the up and come the last couple of seasons, especially, moving to the Big 12 for the first time last season. So to me, like those teams who are at the bottom, quote unquote, of the standings have so much potential. And the top half of the Big 12 is really strong. Arizona really boosts that. Of course, Nigel Kennedy and Texas Tech boost that. And then, I'm looking at Oklahoma State and Arizona State. Those are two powerhouse names in the sport of softball that have women's college and even national championship, resumes in terms of the program. And they're just kind of mid-tier this year. So how can all of those big brands continue to build up and get to the top of the conference? Because there is a ton of potential there. If those names that all those names that I mentioned, if they have better seasons, now you're looking at maybe a league that's comparable to the ACC. I don't think at this point anyone's going to catch the SEC. It is a different level right now. I think 7 of the 8 overall seeds will probably be SEC schools when we, watch the selection show this Sunday. But the Big 12 is chasing the ACC in terms of overall depth and just quality teams from the middle to the top.
When I had Jamie Plunkett on last week, we were talking about Big 12 baseball, and I brought up the subject of bias, whether that's media bias or that is baked into the RPI formula. I mean, do you think the SEC is the beneficiary of that, or do you think that they deserve to get all of those top seeds and all of the plaudits and accolades that they get?
This year, I mean, if you would have asked me this a couple years ago, I would have said the bias. But this year, they've earned it. The SEC is different right now. I'm so intrigued to watch the SEC tournament and see who comes out of that. But you just think of all of the big names right now. And of course, Oklahoma, 4-time defending champ, is the number 1 seed going into the SEC tournament. And I didn't think anyone thought that would happen. And so that just adds just a huge injection of not only star power, but just quality. Texas has done well. They have kind of fallen off in the last couple of weeks in terms of their RPI. They were a team that was ranked number 1 for a couple of weeks earlier this year. Their RPI is now down around 7 or 8. And they're trying to stay above that, top 8 threshold for a supers host potentially, but it's earned. It's phenomenal this year. And, in terms of like ranking the conferences, I would go SEC, ACC, Big 12, Big 10. And Big 10 is climbing. They're right there. It's not too far off a difference because you have quality teams of UCLA, Oregon, RIP Pac-12, and also kind of some up-and-coming teams of Nebraska with Jordy Ball, her star power. They're going to be an awful 2 seed for someone. I would not want Jordy Ball coming into my regional as a 2 seed, but hey, you gotta beat them to win it anyway. So, but Ohio State is also a huge up-and-coming program, offensively one of the best teams in the country in the Big Ten. So Big Ten right on the heels of the Big 12. Big 12 trying to chase the ACC, and everyone is trying to chase the SEC.
Yeah, of course, the SEC got a big boost from a softball standpoint with Oklahoma joining that league. And then, I mean, the Big Ten teams, they're basically, Pac-12 expats,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
With UCLA and Oregon. Washington is always good. USC doesn't have softball. That's always been a weird thing for me. I've never quite understood that.
Me either, because if they made a program, they would be a top 10 team like that. So I always never understood it.
Yeah, with Arizona and triathlon, right? Like Arizona becomes like one of wins a national championship in its second year. I feel like USC could do that, but what they always used to tell me is they don't have the space for it, like the physical space, which I don't know. It just feels like an excuse.
Yeah, I mean, there's a bunch of teams that don't have softball, and you think about what just happened with Duke and Clemson, and that is what helped the ACC boost their conference. You add those two teams, and they are good right away, and all of a sudden now the ACC has depth. It's magic. You look at teams like Vanderbilt, no softball. Miami, no softball. TCU, no softball. Come on, people, let's go.
Yeah, and those are places too. Like Miami obviously has good weather, right, where you could practice year round. Vanderbilt has been extremely good at baseball, so it stands to reason that they could be good at softball. So yep. I don't know. We'll see. I'm afraid that we're in a period right now where schools are more likely to reduce the number of sports programs that they have instead of expand. So wouldn't hold your breath. So let's talk a little bit more about Arizona here. Besides Devyn Netz, who's really been, kind of the star of this team and it's gotten so many honors and accolades and so forth. What do you think stands out the most about this particular squad and gives you some optimism that maybe they can make a run here in the postseason?
I think it's a fun mix when you have a lot of chatter about one player, and that one player can handle the chatter, and that player would be Devyn. Everyone's talking about her, as they should. I don't know when this is going to air, but tomorrow morning, I believe the Big 12 awards come out. And if she is not Player of the Year, you're going to get a very stern phone call from me, the office of the Big 12. So I'm just putting that out there. She better be Big 12 Player of the Year because I cannot think of anybody else for it. It's her. So we'll see what happens tomorrow morning. But to your point, I think the chatter is there. She can handle it. I've been around the team a little bit at practice and watching them as an alum, and the chemistry is really good. And so I don't think that affects the rest of the squad. I think the rest of the squad is incredibly happy for her anytime she's getting these accolades and people are talking about her. And it allows them, I'm talking about Dakota Kennedy, I'm talking about Reagan Shockey, Sydney Stewart, Miranda Stoddard, to kind of slide in and be like, okay, you're not talking about us. The pressure is off. Let us perform. And I think that's a really fun mix to have star power with the one athlete, but then to have the collective supporting bunch that it's not jealousy at all. It's we're right behind you. We're supporting you. And we're ready to, make them write our names down as well. So it's a very deep offense. It's a very solid defense. I think I would put Arizona's outfield up against any outfield in the country with Dakota Kennedy, who was a Gold Glover and All-American last year, Reagan Shockey, who should already be a Gold Glover. I don't know what I need to do to campaign to get her a Gold Glove because she is phenomenal in center field, and consistent Kaya in right field. That is as solid a bunch as you can get. And so they've got all the pieces. They really do.
Reagan Shockey is the fastest softball player I've ever seen. I haven't been watching the sport, as long as you have, but wow. I mean, her speed is just an absolute difference maker out there. Things that stand out to me about this team, obviously the pitching is much improved, which we talked about earlier. The fielding has been kind of a constant under Caitlin Lowe, like very consistently, at or near the top of whatever conference Arizona is in fielding percentage. And then the hitting, the depth this year, it's really pretty incredible. I mean, there's some players who don't even get to play that much, like Paige Dimler, who I think she's hitting over 400 or somewhere around there. So that just shows you how good they've been. Now, this team is not been built on transfers like some, right? There are some transfers, and Miranda Stoddard, I believe, is as an
Yep.
example of that. But they do have one position player who came in this year who's really made a big difference. And I didn't see that coming because they already had an established catcher. And the player we're talking about is Sydney Stewart, who came over from Washington. It's just been absolutely dynamite. What do you think she's brought to the mix?
Presence at the plate, experience, power. So you have to have somebody that's most important hitters are the two hitters that are hitting in front and behind of your best player. So your best player right now is Devyn Netz, who's hitting in front of her and who's hitting behind her. Well, who's hitting in front of her is Sydney Stewart. And so Sydney Stewart has been getting some pitches this year because people don't want to be facing Devyn with runners on base. And when you have somebody that is coming from, the old pack, who was so used to the high level competition, who was under a phenomenal coach in Heather Tarr, so you have that foundation ready to go, and you just plug her into this lineup. Didn't expect her to maybe catch as much as she has this year because Emily Shep was amazing last year as a true freshman. So it's just been, to your point, that depth where maybe, Arizona's staff is struggling to get all those pieces consistent playing time. You definitely have to have Sydney Stewart's bat in the lineup. She's a hitter. And, double-digit home runs this season in front of Devyn, who's leading the team with, I think, 17 home runs. But, yeah, she's been really fun to watch. And she just carries herself a little bit different. You can tell that she's a veteran. You could tell that she has big-time game experience.
Yeah, I think, too, it's a testament to the depth that we've talked about Miranda Stoddard and Devyn Netz and Sydney Stewart. And you've got Dakota Kennedy out there, who's one of the best players in America, right? Who's also, I think, hitting. She missed some time with injury this year, but hitting over 400. She's on base all the time. Also has power from the left side, which you don't see quite as often in this sport. A lot of the left-handed hitters are slap hitters. She's got easy power. I mean, that grand slam, I think it was a grand slam, or home run she hit against Houston was just like an effortless swing.
Yes.
So that just tells you, like, you can go through all this huge list of players, and we didn't even really get into Dakota Kennedy, who's as good as anybody out there. All right, so the last thing I want to talk to you about, Kenzie, is Caitlin Lowe. She entered into almost an impossible situation. It's really hard in college sports, professional sports, but especially college sports, where you might have this legendary coach in place for decades. And Mike Condrea is one of those people. Like, he's the godfather of college softball, basically. Yep. So following him is like following, Mike Krzyzewski, right, at Duke, or someone of that nature. How do you think she's handled that whole situation?
I couldn't think of another person for the job, and I can't think of anyone that could do it better than she's done it. An impossible situation like you're talking about. And even the year where she didn't have as good a talent, still was able to find a way and get her team to the Women's College World Series. Obviously the one blip of missing the tournament in 2003, but then you're right back to it. You don't miss a beat. You go to Supers the next year. That is exactly how you follow it up. And a lot of times you'll see, it's really tough when you have to turn a roster over, and you saw a lot of roster turnover because you're not predicting, Coach Candrea, I love you, but he was getting older. So everyone was, wondering when he's going to retire, but he's not saying a peep. So you just think that he's going to be there forever. And then finally, when he does, call it, there's going to be some roster turnover as coaching changes bring. And so it took, 2 years to really kind of mold her team to the way that she wanted it and get her players in. Obviously, you have the corner pieces of Devyn Netz that was able to kind of bridge the gap. Ali Skaggs, Carly Scoopin, players that played and were recruited for Coach Candrea, but then stuck it out and, gave Coach Lowe a chance and, made some World Series and postseason runs. And so it's now to a point where it feels very solid. It feels like the future of Arizona softball is in as good a place as you could want it to be. All the alums are incredibly happy. And so I think that's what I'm feeling as an alum. Obviously, I'm like, I love where my program is at. And I think Kate has done a phenomenal job. I've loved the staff that she's been able to bring. Having Amber Freeman come in, Lauren Lappin. I mean, those are two former Pac-12 Players of the Year, All-Americans with not only professional but like international experience. So, and then you add in Coach Conrad, who's done wonders this season with the pitchers. It's been really fun to watch them work, and it's been a good year for Arizona softball, and it feels like they're going to continue to hit the ground running.
When they didn't make the NCAA tournament in 2023, that was a big deal because, I mean, Arizona had made it. I can't remember what the exact number was. Was it like 39 years in a row? 35? Yeah, it was almost 4 decades worth of consecutive NCAA tournament appearances. Obviously, several national championships, making it all the way to the World Series multiple times. So people were, they were kind of skeptical, I think, of Caitlin. Maybe that was just outside of the softball world. Maybe it was inside the softball world, but there were definitely some doubts about whether she was the right person for the job. And she bounced back big time, as you mentioned, last year, and did it without a very, very good player in Devyn Netz, who was unable to play the entire season. They never really figured out the pitching last year, yet they were still able to go as far as they did. Are there certain characteristics that stand out to you about a Caitlin Lowe coach team that you've been able to observe now that she's been on the job for 4 years?
Yeah, I think, teams always reflect their coaches, and being around Caitlin, she's as consistent as they come, which is obviously she was a product of Coach Candrea, as most of us were. That was his whole thing, was consistency is key, and come to the office and drop your baggage at the gate, and you come with a certain mentality to the field every single day. And she is that very business-like, consistent coach. If you have someone that's a little bit emotional at the top, sometimes that trickles down through the team, and you can let your assistants kind of be, not the hotheads, I want to say, but those ones that really like rile the team up. But I think a head coach, you have to kind of be the statesman. You have to be the one to set the tone. These are the expectations. I've walked the walk. I can talk the talk. I'm not going to get too high. I'm not going to get too low. I'm going to be very matter of fact. And she is just like that. And so she was as consistent. She's a consistent player. She was one of the best, if not the best, to ever do it at her position. And she's quality, consistent, simple, which I think is really key for this generation of athletes. I think you have to really simplify the game. You have to really simplify the noise. I think if you're worried about all of the things that are outside of what is our main focus right here between the white lines, that's where it can get really tough for these athletes, because there is a lot of noise for the athletes in this generation. And so you need someone that can kind of speak to that simplicity. And I also will give her a shout out. She's raising 2 kids that are under, I think Harper's maybe 6 or 7, raising them in the Tucson community, and you wouldn't even know. It is, you see Harper and Beckham in the stands at every game. They don't miss a game. And I know she's always tuned in to, Harper's starting to play consistently on the softball field and on the soccer pitch. Did I get that right? They call it a pitch? Okay, great. So I know her kids are doing the things, and she's locked into her team and raising a family. And, she's really just living that superwoman life, and nobody's really talking about it because she doesn't let it be a storyline. She's just so consistent and so businesslike. And it's been really fun to watch her blossom these last 4 years.
Yeah, Caitlin Lowe definitely has Arizona softball on the right track. They are, again, the number 2 seed in the Big 12 tournament. We're recording this podcast midday Tuesday. The softball tournament in Oklahoma City begins on Wednesday. There are 12 participants. So the first 4 teams get a bye. No, I'm sorry. It's not. It's 11.
11, yeah.
It's 11, yeah. So, okay. So the top 4 get a bye regardless. Arizona is one of those. Let's just say top 3 get a bye. 3. Okay. little different from baseball. Baseball's 12 in the top 4. Softball is 11 in the top 3.
Every conference is so different too, and so you
Yeah.
know it's really hard to like. I'm calling the Sun Belt championship this weekend, and so I've been trying to figure out how they're doing their bracket, and it's very similar to this with the Big 12. But if you look,
it's
the
the
American
4
Conference
versus
has some really weird tournament format. So yeah, we're figuring it out.
Yeah, it's the 4 versus the 5. That's the matchup that's set for Thursday. Yes. The other matchups will be determined by the results on Wednesday. Arizona is the 2 seed. They play at 3 o'clock Arizona time on Thursday, and if they win, they'll be at 3:30 on Friday against Iowa State or someone coming from a lower down in the tournament. Should they upset Iowa State, Texas Tech is the number 1 seed in the tournament, and the final is on ESPN at 9 a.m. Arizona time on Saturday, bright and early. I like that because I'm writing about it, so plenty of time.
Yeah, get in the paper. Exactly. Yep.
It all sink in. Kenzie Fowler is a former U of A softball player. She is a current college softball analyst for the ESPN family of networks. You will undoubtedly hear her voice as we proceed through the NCAA softball postseason. Regionals begin next week. As Kenzie mentioned, Arizona is expected to be a host, so that'll be very exciting. That will be, unless something unforeseen happens, Kenzie, my first time actually covering softball in person at Hillenbrand. So be cool. Yeah, it'll be a cool new experience for me. We, of course, thank Kenzie for joining us today here on the Wildcast podcast. We thank you for listening. You can catch us on Apple, Spotify. You can also watch the video version of this at Tucson.com. Thanks to everybody for tuning in, and we will see you next time.